All right, good afternoon. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm going to kick us off and then hand it over to Tom and Greg for a moment. But this presentation is titled NextGen 911, How GIS Saves Lives. My name is Matthew McLam, and I'm the State Geographic Information Officer and also serve as the GIS Project Manager for NextGen 911 in North Carolina. And I'll let you introduce and get started.
Thank you, everybody. I'm Tom Rogers. Got a long title. I'm the Next Generation 911 Program Manager and Network Engineer for the North Carolina 911 Board. So it's a mouthful to say, I run the 911 program for the state. And I'll let Greg introduce himself, then I'll come back to me.
All right, I'm Greg Dotson, work for the North Carolina 911 Board as the NMAC Manager, Network Monitoring and Assistance Center located in Raleigh.
And we won't really touch on that today, on specifically that, but that's 911 for 911. So let's talk about why we're here today. As you all know, GIS is a critical part of 911. That has not always been the case, and we'll kind of go back through just a little bit of history of how we got to where we are now, but it is certainly critical anymore. So we're now just 57 years old. So if you think about it, and the way things go, 57 years is really not a long time. But during that 57 years, up until recently, there really hasn't been a tremendous amount of change in 911. There was old databases, old tabular databases, and selective routing that kind of directed things around. So if you think back, and I'm looking around the room, and some of you would remember these kind of phones in your home, and we were kind of tied to a location. I was laughing with Greg earlier. What I called a mobile phone when I was a kid was one of these with a very long cord that I would run from room to room.
And the good old days when phones had buttons.
Indeed. So, we're moving along. The big thing next to happen is the wireless phones enter the picture. So we're becoming a mobile society. So this introduces new problems of our own that it turns back, starting to look at you guys to start to solve.
FCC acted upon a needed change that ordered 3 phases starting way back in 2001. Who can remember that year? Phase 0 basically said it was required to deliver the 911 call, the wireless call, to a 911 center. Phase 1, phase 0, that was phase 0. Phase 1 provided a callback number and began the process to identify the tower location by triangulation from the carrier. So phase 2 come along and said, hey, we're going to provide you the telephone number. We're also going to provide you a distance from the tower. Phase 1 may have still only told us it was coming from a certain tower. Phase 2 come along and said, hey, we can give you a certain distance from that tower.
Okay. So how many of you in the room can remember having a Zach Morris phone or a bag phone? I see a few hands coming up. I'll admit I had a bag phone. I thought it was the coolest thing. I even put it in my car like I thought I was somebody.
No, I couldn't afford that. I had one that was mounted to the floorboard. That was the first one. However, I think I had every third one in here until the
phones
iPhone.
basically went from a glorified radio to the modern computer that you keep in your pocket now that we do everything and seem to live by. Over 80% of the 911 calls, not only in North Carolina but across the nation, are over a wireless phone now. Actually, in our state, we're probably close to 86, 87%. And most of the remaining really are VoIP calls. There's very few landline anymore. So we've gone from where landline was the only thing around to where it is now the prominent thing. So we've had a few things that have come out of FCC over the years to try to improve and make things better as we move along. Kerry's Law came out. That's not specifically tied to GIS, but it does make it where you have to dial 911, like if you're in a hotel room or other business. Historically, you had to dial a 9 and then a 911 or whatever, a pound or whatever, to get a signal to get out. And Carrie, it's a true story, Carrie Hunt, she was in a hotel room. Her estranged husband found her there. She tried to dial 911 and was unable to get out. So she unfortunately lost her life as a result of that. The next law that's coming along that really affects GIS is Ray Baum's Act. So long story short, basically this says you have to have a dispatchable location. It doesn't matter where it is in the building, if it's on the 3rd floor, or the back side, or whatever. We've got to have a dispatchable location. So we need to know where the call's coming from and where to send a responder to help the folks out. All right, so the next slide basically, I'll kind of break this one down and make it a little simple. In the original days of 911, we got a 911 call. As a call taker, you would hear a lot of clicking when you answered it, and it took seconds for that call setup. What's going on in the background is we are reaching out to databases across the country to try to locate that location information and identify all the caller's information. In the modern GIS-fed 911, all that information comes along with the call. It sets up in fractions of a second. So when we answer the phone, all the information is there and the caller is there. So it really makes a huge difference. And if you think about it, apps like Uber, where folks are, you go on your phone, you go, I need to be picked up at this particular location. You know exactly where you are. They know exactly where to pull up and pick you up if you're 10 feet into the entrance or whatever. So we've been working hard to get 911 to the same accuracy.
North Carolina remains the 911 leader across the nation. We have a statewide EZNet provided by AT&T with 124 911 centers known as PSAPs, public safety answering points, and call routing options such as alternate and abandonment routing, including policy routing. We'll explain that a little further. We utilize interoperability between PSAPs to ensure calls are answered. We call them friends. We have our 911 centers have friends that can assist and take calls in the event of an emergency. North Carolina has made a huge investment in GIS to ensure 911 calls are delivered with location information to identify responders and to dispatch them accordingly.
All right, the map you're seeing now, during Helene, we were routing calls around the state, trying to make sure no call got dropped, and we were very, very fortunate that the system worked as designed. So we talked to Matt and his folks many, many times. Matter of fact, y'all were on our daily calls, going over what we can do to try to visualize what we're doing and trying to help folks understand what we've accomplished. So they came up with this map really on the fly, and it allowed us to go in and show some of the things we were doing. So if you see the map, the counties that are highlighted in red, they were in what we call abandonment routing. And this is where we manually program the system and say, hey, we're going to move their calls to another PSAP across the state so they can answer them. So because it's an IP network, we can move them anywhere around and have any others answer the call. If you look at the PSAP, it's in yellow, and actually this was Buncombe County. Buncombe County never had an interruption of service to their PSAP. So they were able to take their own calls, but they had so many calls coming in, they were overwhelmed. So what we were able to do, at one point we had up to 5 other PSAPs backing them up and doing load sharing. So it showed the flexibility of how we can do some policy routing. But all this is tied back to the accuracy of that location information coming in and the location of that information going back out on our side so we can direct the responders of where to go. So it's all part of that critical functionality together, that interoperability.
And I will add, Tom, it helped too when the 911 board was looking at, none of us expected what was happening in Western North Carolina to happen. So regional coordinators and our MMAC staff were looking to make sure, and this is why they created the map. You don't want to inundate another county in the east with calls from 4 different 911 centers. So this map helped us look immediately and go, wait a minute, we need to route Rutherford calls to another location. Buncombe's already utilizing 4 PSAPs, 911 centers, Cherokee, Mitchell County, Madison County. This helped give us a visual as we're standing in the operations center going, wait a minute, next county that needs to be rerouted, and we were up to 19 that had to be rerouted, alternate routed, or use policy routing. Load balancing started.
At the peak, it was 19 PSAPs being routed to 23 PSAPs.
Yep.
So we've been talking about this emergency IP network. So we call it the EZNet. You'll hear that a lot when folks are discussing it, especially when you're talking to your counterparts on the 911 side of the house. Back in 17, this was implemented. We had a lot of forward-thinking legislative folks and leadership in the state who they got everything set up right to make sure it could be done the right. AT&T was selected as the provider to build this network. Legislatively, we cannot own the network, so this actually works out good. It gives me a lot of peace of mind because I can pick up the phone and say, if something's not working right, it's theirs to fix, right? We work very, very closely with CGIA to make sure all the data is in place, make sure all the I3 data is set up properly, and they work closely with the PSAPs along with GeoCom to make sure everything is set up properly. To date, all of our PSAPs are connected to our EZNet, all 124 of them. That's actually 191 locations. We have what we call a hosted environment. So if you think it's kind of like virtualization or cloud in a way, instead of having all of your equipment in your back room that a PSAP manager's got to stress and worry about, we host it in our data sites. And that way we can take care of those, manage those, keep them updated and everything working properly. And that's one less thing they have to worry about. 63 of our PSAPs are in our Vesta environment, which is a Motorola platform, and 53 of them are in our Viper, which is an Intrado platform. And we have 8 what we call ESINet only, and that's 8 that are still functioning with their own back-end equipment, although they're on the network. And we've actually got several of those who are already in flight moving over to the hosted environment. Of course, you see our land mass and population, and you can read, I won't read the numbers to you, but the whole state's covered because all of our PSAPs are covered, and all GIS jurisdictions have met the I3 data requirement. There's 113 of the PSAPs who are actually routing with that data, and the remaining of those, there's a hardware replacement we're working on right now. It's hopefully will be done in the next few months, and then that way everything will be completely I3 across the state from that side of the house.
Trust me, he wants to read out the numbers. He loves the numbers.
I do love the numbers. We're proud. We've worked hard, and yeah, I'm proud of the numbers.
So let's talk about the GIS side of the house a little bit for NextGen 911 in North Carolina. By show of hands, who in the room is responsible for maintaining GIS data that supports NextGen 911 in North Carolina? So several of you, thank you very much. Yes, please do understand the importance of that. I mean, we're going to hit on that in the next few slides, but I think the slide really speaks volumes that talks about how GIS was critical to the whole process and allowed all the calls during and immediately after Hurricane Helene went through Western North Carolina to be answered. And we appreciate that support, and that could not have been possible without your support and contributions to NextGen 911. So the process really is unchanged in the NextGen 911 GIS data process here in North Carolina. From the way it's been over the past couple of years. But basically, you're updating your GIS data, you're putting that into the NENA standard and uploading that information into GIS Data Hub. Jessica with GeoCom is here with us. Wave your hand, Jessica. Yes, thank you. So you've probably seen emails from Jessica or the NC team with GeoCom, and we greatly appreciate that partnership. When you upload that information into GIS Data Hub, those QA/QC processes are run, and they're much faster now. If you use version 1 of GIS Data Hub, you knew that took several hours sometimes to get those results back. Now it's usually within minutes, which allows you to make corrections to that data much quicker than before. Once your data is clear of errors, that information is then transferred into the statewide GIS data set by GeoCom and submitted to AT&T, and is then used for call routing in North Carolina. The success of GIS and NextGen 911 in North Carolina is really built on 3 pillars. It's communication, that's with GeoCom support and support from CGIA. That's collaboration, that's the PSAP, GIS data stewards, the county data stewards, in some cases town or cities as well. And then also the coordination. So the 911 board is made up of 4 regional coordinators. You may or may not interact with them. It depends on how closely you're interacting with your 911 PSAP in your county or jurisdiction. But really, we can't have success in this process without one of these pillars. I know it's cliche, but I think of a stool with 3 legs. You really can't sit or be supported with one of those missing, and that is the case. Just as a reminder, we have road center lines addresses. We have our emergency service boundaries. That's fire, law, and EMS. The PSAP and provisioning boundaries, and then lastly, the ALI database, and all of these make up the required data layers and information for NextGen 911 in North Carolina. The map that everyone loves. This map is available and is on the 911 board website. This map and this information is updated every Sunday evening with new information. This shows when your county last uploaded GIS data for NextGen 911. Obviously, we're shooting for that 0 to 30 day mark, which is in green. When we start slipping, we see the yellow, red, or orange, and then red. And then if you see the outline around the counties, that's where we have counties that have submitted data, but that data contains critical errors. I think it's a good time just to remind you that if your data is submitted and contains critical errors, even if it's just one on a polygon, if there's an overlap, that's going to prevent your data from being used for call routing. So you may be submitting data every week or every day for a month or 2 months, but your data is going to be old because we can only use the data that was last free of critical errors. So it's very important that those critical errors are resolved and resolved as soon as possible so that that data and newest data can be used for call routing. And that's going to become even more important, and Tom's going to talk about that in just a moment. But I will say, we say this every time we have the opportunity to present. If you are responsible for data uploads and this map is new to you, please do come and see us afterwards. I have a card. I'd love for you to reach out so we can get you on the distribution list. Emails go out every Sunday night to the 911 board staff and regional coordinators, as well as contacts for every PSAP, including GIS data stewards, and in some cases even upper-level administration within the counties have requested to receive those emails. So those automatically go out every Sunday at 6 p.m., and this dashboard is updated during that time frame as well. So please, if you're in that process, come see me. I want to make sure you have this and that you're on that distribution list.
And if you want to hear that warning anymore, we can have you join any of our committee meetings or our board meetings, and we say that same warning ad nauseum. On top of it, the regional coordinators that Matt mentioned, those are our folks in the different regions. That way we break them up around the state. They're going to call your PSAPs. If your dates are over 30 days, they're going to call them and say, hey, where's your data? You need to update your data. It's just that critical anymore. So one thing we just did recently, matter of fact, back in September, we amended our contract with AT&T, and we wanted to offer additional things for our PSAPs. We new features to the call handling systems, additional offerings, optional offerings. So we were trying to do a lot of these things to enhance our contract. One of those that had come up early on was the addition of TDMS. Now, this actually helps the GIS side. To date, we have one PSAP who is onboarded with this. They've kind of been going and piloting for us, looking for any pitfalls or any little missteps we've made or any enhancements we need to make to the way it flows, the workflow on there. But it seems to be going well, and this is going to be rolled out to everybody. So what does this mean for you? It means no more creation or working on the MSAG. So I know a lot of folks have said this is double work. This is, I'm having to do it twice. And this goes back to the OSPs and the way things come in, but we're having to do double work. So this is going in place now. Like I said, one county is complete. There are about a half a dozen in flight right now, and all the PSAPs eventually will move over to TDMS, which is this transitional data management service, so that we can actually make it easier on you while we long-term move over to all the OSPs delivering true IP traffic. That's coming. The FCC has made a mandate on that. There's no specific date they have to be on it yet, but it's out there. It's been made public, and everybody's having to move over to it. So it's coming, but this will get us through to that and hopefully make your lives a little bit easier.
And I'll mention here that the importance here is previously where addresses did not need to meet that 98% match rate with the alley as street center lines did, that's now required to be able to transition to this new service offering and the MSAG going away. So addresses play a much more critical role in NextGen 911. So please, if you have questions about that, we would love to answer those and address those and spend time with you. And again, there's time still to make those updates to the addresses, but the PSAPs will be coming on board, and as schedules and the timeline for that is available, I'm sure that'll be communicated accordingly.
Yep. Did you have anything else? All good. Okay. And yeah, we're glad to bring this along. Like Matt said, that does make it does highlight even more so how critical the interaction between GIS and 911 has become. They're no longer really two separate things in my mind. It's one working together, one team to make it happen. So, thank you for your part in that.
So thank you, everyone. I think that's all that we have, but we'd love to open it up if there are any questions.
Are you also tracking dispatch time for call received to the responder getting to the person? You got that metric?
The question asked, and let me make sure I'm going to paraphrase here. Are we tracking the call receive time and the dispatch time of the 911 call? Is that?
Responder on site.
Okay.
Car gets to the site of the emergency.
So from the 911 board perspective, we track the answering of the call. Once the call has been answered, it's up to that jurisdiction. That's their responsibility to dispatch that and using their protocols to do that. So we don't track that side of it.
And do you track any estimation of the number of lives saved? Because time is life. And I wonder if you've tried to calculate lives saved.
We certainly track the number of calls, and we've got several metrics in place, and we offer statewide analytics to all the PSAPs. It's kind of challenging to track some of the lives saved because we don't always get that after action to know what has occurred. We don't know if the CPR worked or if they got there fast enough, or did the ambulance get on scene to the accident to save the person's life. So those are some challenging metrics. I think on the EMS side, they do a lot better tracking at that because they have to do patient care forms and file that paperwork as well as the fire departments. You betcha. PSAP is Public Safety Answering Point. Often called interchangeably with a 911 center. You will hear ECC or Emergency Call Center, but we don't call them that in North Carolina. And don't go to a PSAP and call it an ECC because you're going to get some nasty looks. You want to take that one since you did the map? I think. Well, sounds like we might have a couple part question here. So, when the call has been abandoned over to another, abandoned or alternate routed, either way, it's all policy routing. So when that call is delivered to the other center, they get the same information they would have gotten sitting in that center. So all the same information flows back through. Getting it back is a little more challenging. We actually worked with CGIA to, they came up with some maps that we sent all the centers so they could actually pull up a detailed level of that information during the storm. But there was many methods of sending that call back. It was radio, phone, DCI, Teams, Google.
Well, one thing I think she's talking about too, though, is like generally if I was running a PSAP and we call our friends, so I can have up to 9 different counties that can support me. Generally, we ask them to have 4. So we will share the maps between those. So if I'm Rutherford and I'm sharing with Cleveland, then I'm going to call Katie Doherty and say, hey, will you share my centerline files with Cleveland and Gaston and Mecklenburg? So that way when that call comes through, then they have that data set. Is that what your question was?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to make that connection with the centerline data, for example. Like if that's a big disconnect, if we don't have a statewide.
Yeah. So a couple of things there. I know ahead of time, a lot of PSAPs will have their data for the surrounding area, or at least a buffer, and they have that information available through GIS Data Hub to download a whole statewide data set. Now, if somebody from the west is routing calls to Brunswick County on the coast, they probably don't have that data loaded because they normally wouldn't need it. But we did create a statewide map with search capabilities using Address NC, and that was sent out to all the PSAPs to say, hey, if you're receiving a call from one of your friends in the West, you can quickly enter that address in this online map and locate where they're at and see those streets. It had roads, addresses, and other useful base data. that way they had that access readily available at their fingertips. And that's something we spun up quickly as a result of that same type of question and concern of, hey, I don't know the road network in Buncombe County, in Brunswick, for example.
There's also some third-party vendors out there that share that data as well, that is working with North Carolina, and we're engaging with them as well. And so each county can share the information and be able to communicate back and forth and actually see that data that's coming from the device. One of the slides we were talking about is it's not always coming from a phone. It's not always coming from the database that you populate the MSAG. It's actually coming from the device now. So there are other resources for counties to engage with that can pull that mapping data over, and they see, you call in and screaming there's somebody, an incident at Walmart. Okay, there's Walmart everywhere, So the telecommunicator can get that information to go, wait a minute, I'm not in such and such county. That Walmart is in Brunswick, for example. So it gives them that resource to be able to do that. And then the 911 board is also looking at other avenues, and that is a big thing for you. If I take that ambulance call in Brunswick County, but it's for Rutherford or Cleveland, is we're providing and working with them on resources to get that call back, because that is a critical piece of dispatch.
Thank you. Great question. Any other questions? All right. Well, great. Again, if you're part of that NextGen workflow, you don't get those emails on Sunday nights, please do come and see me or see us, and we'll make sure that we get you added. And we appreciate you being here today. Thank you.